This video clip, I'll demonstrate how to use the latest version of Microsoft Excel to construct graphs. Our graphs are normally titled Y versus X. So if you're making a graph of position versus time, position is the Y value, time is the X. Now in Excel, we usually put our X in column A. So I'm going to write time in seconds at the heading of column A. And I'm going to write position in centimeters for the heading of column B. You don't have to do this, but sometimes it's helpful. So suppose we collected data for a battery-operated car moving across the floor, and we wanted to know where its position was at every second up to 8 seconds. So we have a starting point. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 seconds. And we were eyeballing this, just looking at as it drove down where it was after 1 second, 2 seconds. So it started at the origin. And let's say after 1 second, it was about at 34 centimeters. And then it was at 67. And then 105, go 140, 173, 204, 240, and 276. So those are our positions at those times. In order to make the graph, I will left click and drag to highlight the data in the data table, and then go up to the top, insert, and the chart we want to insert is normally just the XY scatter. It looks just like a regular graph from a math class. There are no connectors between your data points. And so I click that, and here's the graph that comes up. We want to label our graph, so I can go to the design, add chart element, and I can give axis titles. So the horizontal axis is time in seconds. You always put labels on your axes. The vertical will be position in centimeters. We want to give our graph a title, and we'll call this position versus time. And one other thing that's good to do on most of your graphs, but sometimes we don't want to do it or need to do it, is to add in more grid lines to make it look like more regular graph paper. So I put in the grid lines. So now I've got my graph, position versus time. The vertical axis is labeled, the horizontal axis is labeled, and it looks like it's making a linear function. So in order to get the equation, one way to do it is to right click on one of the dots, and then we see this option for adding trend line. When I select the add trend line, it gives me options of what kind of graph. I can tell it just different things to try, and this newest version, if you click on the wrong thing, sometimes it gives you an error. But this is linear, and linear is the default, so we want to leave linear checked. It's not necessary or even advisable to set the intercept to 0 on this graph, but we do want to display the equation and the R-squared value. The R-squared value tells us how well that equation fits our data. So the equation shows up. We can click on it and move it around if we want to. One thing we might want to do to that trend line label is to fill it with white so that the grid lines behind don't show up. We can also change the color, the font, give it a border, We can do different things to that. But now we've finished our graph and we want to print it. Now, if you select the graph and then go File, Print, your graph will print as a full page landscape. If you don't select the graph and you've clicked just anywhere on the screen and then you say File, Print, it prints the whole screen and your graph is normally split. So we don't want that. We want to print full page graphs. You can also click on the graph, and if I right click, I can copy and then I can paste it into another document, Word or PowerPoint. So you will be making graphs quite a bit, and it is a useful skill for you to learn.